Alright, get started. My name is Jeremiah Williams, I'm an ex-deputy general manager of Tangerine Metro Authority. We're here to talk about water quality today. With me, I've got Emily Cole, our Bangor Imperial Drink Facilitator, and we've also got some guests from the Texas Water Resource Institute and SFA. And I appreciate y'all being here. And we're gonna get going. So this is our agenda for the day. I'm gonna introduce myself, which I've done already, and we're going to talk about the Angelina Nation River Authority a little bit, and then Emily's going to tell you about the Clean Rivers program, and then we're going to talk about some special projects that we have in addition to the Clean Rivers program. Maybe Caleb is going to talk about Chinese Callow, and we're going to have some open discussion. And if you have any questions in the meantime, as we get going, then feel free to hop up. We're going to have one online presenter, Wyatt Easton from TCQ. Wasn't able to be here in person today, so he's going to present online, assuming that we can get the technology to work. So bear with us if that's a little bit. So there are 15 river authorities in the state of Texas. Angelina Nation River Authority covers the upper and middle portions of the Next River Basin. We share responsibility for the Next River Basin with the Lower Neches Valley Authority, which has 3 counties at the bottom of the basin. We think of ourselves in 3 parts: our administration division, as government coordination, water resource planning and development, and economic development. We also have field operations division that operates other and wastewater facilities. We take over failing water systems and try to bring them back up to spec. And we also operate some that we've had for years and years that are not fitting. And then we have a biosolids composting facility in Jacksonville that takes in wastewater sludge from municipal wastewater treatment plants and turns it into compost to prevent it from going into landfills. And then our environmental division, we have the Clean Rivers Program and Clean Water Act activities. Yeah, our environmental laboratory, which does all of our testing for those programs, as well as testing for municipalities and private individuals. And then we have our on-site sewage facilities program. This is permitting and complaints and enforcement for home septic systems in Angelina County and in the portion of San Augustine County that's in the Next River Basin, and also around like San Rafael, 2,000 foot zone around the San Rafael police. So with that, I will let Emily tell you about the Clean Rivers program, and I will like my activities this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily Spool. I'm a little socked up right now, so I'm sorry if I don't talk loud enough or if I stop to catch my breath because I can't breathe out of my nose. But thank you for bearing with me. The Clean Rivers program was established in 1991 by the 72nd Texas legislation. The purpose is to monitor the state of the water quality and make sure it is within compliance with TCEQ requirements. There's an emphasis on the collection of the water quality for regulatory purposes, funded by state fees. Collaboration with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Thank you so much. And 15 partner agencies. TCQ has allocated a total of $304,000 between a 2-year basis. So the fiscal year 2024 through 2025. That gives us 652,000 per fiscal year. This is the breakdown of where these where the costs are going. A majority of it is to personnel salary, and the rest would be to our labs as we do in-house testing. Americans continues to monitor 37 sites quarterly. We also have 2 24-hour DO sites, one on the Riverview portion of Sam River, and the other would be at Cedar Creek of 287. We have We just completed sampling for the Eyes Bayou. No, I got a continuation project is expected for 2026. Lanai Bayou signal is completed in February. We're looking to start sampling again within next month.
I think we've actually got it scheduled for this month.
This month. Okay. Sandy Creek began sampling in June of 2025. They had 3 sites in Jasper off of Main Street in Jasper, 777 in Jasper, and then FM 77 towards east of San Diego Lake. Bayou Carrizo sampling is to begin in more fall, I think,
So pretty soon.
and will continue for 24 months. The Toyat Bayou Water Protection Plan information continuation is also planned for 2026. This is a map of all of the monitoring sites. These are the parameters collected that we do, that gets reported to TCEQ, that our lab test score. Most of the permits right now are mainly E. coli. There's the rivery portion of Sam Raven has been struggling with dissolved oxygen for a little bit, as well as Cedar Creek, but it has just been changed from a perennial or an annual.
Perennial. Yeah.
Perennial. So the requirements are a little bit changed on it. These are all the segment watersheds. We were grateful to receive a grant from Temple, the TL Temple Foundation. We replaced the aisle of mud from Madison. It's needed to perform samples for nitrate, nitrite, sulfate, chloride. Our previous unit was more than 10 years old. I think it was a little bit more like older than dinosaurs because nobody would even come service it anymore. It's like the Crown Vic of vehicles. The new unit was installed mid-April, and so far it is working really well. We're extremely grateful for TL Temple and their generosity, and thank you to Kimberly for being such an awesome coworker and bringing the Temple Foundation a part of it. We just published the 2025 Upper Dreams Replacement Highlights Report. First annually by AMRA and typically slides how to do previous year's events, hold on the programs, and map for email portions of the nature basin and relevant topics to our Cleveland program. To limit the redundancy, the style of the report is changed every other year on a 6-year cycle. Last year's cycle was watershed characterization. This year is a standard format and provides updates on water quality as well as what's happening in the nature river basin. Yeah. 2025 Basin Highlight Report covers updates to the TCEQ Integrated Report, extreme weather events, recreation, education, and outreach, special projects planned in the basin, and topics of interest to watershed stakeholders. You can follow this link, and it will take you to the publish. I think the pictures are pretty cute. It's a nice turtle. These are all of the impairments or the segments that are on for your 3D list right now. These are reclassifications and delistings from the 2024 IR, which they say got moved to TNDL.
Yeah, the ones that are moving from 5A to 4A, it doesn't mean that the water is necessarily meeting the standards now, but it moves to a category saying that something's been done about it. So we've done TMDLs in those watersheds, and that means there's a plan in place to improve water quality. So it comes off of one list and goes onto a different list.
So last year was what year for East Texas. I think it was the beginning of May. We had Hurricane Beryl come through, which just was a mini Hurricane Harvey. By the end of the year, by the end of July, the yearly rainfall had exceeded the 30-year average at 54.2 inches, and by the end of the year, the total had reached 72.1 inches, which is the highest recording since 2004. Um, the biggest thing with big rainwater like this is it destroys habitat, it destroys the creek, and any aquatic system's natural ability to remove or absorb pollutants from the system. Um, Excessive rain also can overwhelm the sewage systems, leading to the overflow of raw sewage into the creeks. When Hurricane Beryl came through, I was working under the Texas Game Wardens, and the water had gotten so bad it had pushed a 13-foot alligator out on the Highway 7 going east towards Center. And it's not fun getting a 13-foot alligator like in the middle of the highway, especially when they're mad and they think they've done their wrong. So I included some stuff about the stuff that I've found as far as I've been here. Uh, Alligator snapping turtles. Anyone started a joint project with TPWD on alligator snapping turtle reporting. This is just to bring awareness to the public within the Neches River Basin about these animals. They're protected at the state and federal law. You can't possess them. You can't possess the shell. You can't kill them. You can't eat them. Can't have them as pet. Tribe. But you can hold them for a picture. You accidentally catch one, you can hold it for a picture. It's time to figure that out. A lot of people ask me, I want to tell them my own stuff. I ain't here. Um, so alligators and snapping turtles they're just crazy. I don't know, they're so interesting. Alexander and I are on the Angelina below Doubleport, and this alligator snapping turtle that I'm holding was caught up on an outline. Right now, that's kind of one of their foods right now. People that don't tiger trot lines, you can't go trot line without having having permission from family to set up. But people don't want to tag them, and it puts you in a situation where you have to call game warden and wait for approval to cut that trot line. And sometimes you just can't really wait that long. If you leave that animal there, the next person that passes it might just shoot it. It's what a lot of people do. They shoot them and then they cut their own line because they don't want to deal with them. Uh, Another cool thing about them is they are. You're gonna have to help me out here. What is it called when the certain reptiles that the sex is based on temperature?
Oh,
I forgot what it's called.
I'm spotted. Thank Abbas.
Anyway,
Come to me later.
climate change is a big topic right now, and that is another threat that we've kind of been looking into for these animals. It seems that there's been a bigger population of females being born than there are males. So we're thinking that if there is like the changing climate, it's possibly affecting the nest, and that's something you really, really got to think on to try to beat that. Since 2020, 175 alligator snapping turtles have been reported to the server from all over the state. There's been some in Oklahoma. There's been some in, I think, Colorado had one or something. There's 3 species of them. There's the Apalachicola, one that starts with an M, and then this one. This, as you said, in the TC gear, this is probably one of the best things I've ever done. It serves as a purpose to check for the bioaccumulation of toxins in fish, such as pesticide, herbicide, anything else, metals that might come into the water. Monitoring fish issue over time also helps track the changes in contaminant levels. You're checking, are your methods of trying to prevent contamination working? Is the contamination in say bass, they're the top predator in an ecosystem like this. So they're gonna have the most contaminant level because they're eating all of the other smaller fish. Uh, so if they continue to have high levels, then you know something's not working and you gotta change your plan or try to pinpoint exactly where those fish are an all over indicator of the water quality. Some of them are more sensitive than others. Perch tend to be a little bit more sensitive. And then you have other animals like gar, a rail, which are a lunkfish. They rely a lot on both breathing through their gills and their air buffers. So sometimes, when they're hitting that water a lot, especially in those like a stagnant pond where you see gar constantly hitting the top water, that's because they're coming up for air because there's no DO to the pond. They're just lost. We thought you ought to know. Otters are actually they're not rare in Texas, but a lot of people don't ever see them. These two were taken on my second run ever with Jeremiah. We were at Hurricane Creek at 324. It was like 32 degrees outside. He said, "There's an otter behind me." I'm gonna turn around. Oh, there's an otter behind me. And these guys are kind of like bass. They're going to be the top predators. Um, so keratin metals bind to keratin. So you can take keratin samples from an otter and test it for metalloids and metals, uh, in that habitat. The second one was at Alexander Bayou. Yeah. This was 2 months ago. That's a male otter. All the females right now are in ponds raising their young. So the males are going to be out in the mini burger system, and they're not happy right now. So they'll hit no biggest syndrome. They're not cute and friendly. Yeah. And there's some cute little otter tracks. Great animals. And they are really sensitive to water pollution. So there's a good indicator to see both of them in those creeks. And then my favorite of all, snakes. These are snakes that I found on all my runs. That was on the riverine portion of St. Raycron. It was out in the fall. That was on Lenore Creek at 526. That was at Lenore Creek. And that was by the Fort Bridge. So snakes make up a significant portion of the middle order predators that keep our natural ecosystems working. There are also reptiles. Reptiles are one of our biggest indicators of water quality because they have semi-permeable skin. Everything in the water they absorb way faster than what they do by eating it. Studies have shown that snake scales can be used to assess up to 19 metals and metalloids. That's because snake scales are made of keratin, like my hair. Declining snake populations do indicate a possible problem in wetlands and other like these ecosystems. That's one of the first things I look for if I'm out on a run. I'm looking for frogs and snakes and salamanders because they're going to be the first ones to go, and that's when you know you have something going on in your creek. And snakes are also affected by air pollution because they have highly sensitive lungs. So not only does water quality affect them, but stuff like road pollution, noise pollution from the road, it affects them up to 50 feet. If you give a 50 feet buffer, like on the stream side management zone, that just the noise pollution from the road can affect them. And these are some of our additional resources. This is the TC Cute Clean Waters Program link. The SWCO's procedure rail, Upper Nature's Basal Quality Assurance Project Plan, QAPP, and our CRP monitoring activities, our coordinating monitoring schedule, annual education and outreach materials, and the 2025 Basin Highlights Report. This is my connection. We need to get old. Thank you for bearing with me as I can't breathe.
So quick, Ellen here. You could have a question on the chat, so whoever would like to answer. David Villarreal, he has asked, are there any studies or work done to determine the sources of the bacterial impairments? For example, microfield source tracking, comparing to wildlife DNA, canine, livestock, municipal wastewater, etc.
Yes, short answer. We'll work with TWRI pretty heavily, and they have worked throughout the state pretty heavily on bacterial source tracking. In the Nature River Basin specifically, we've done bacterial source tracking during the development of the Atoyac Watershed Protection Plan. And I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but wild hogs are a big thing, and cattle, deer. The human sources are not as big a component as you would think, but the human sources are generally on the ones that we can control. So we're limited to trying to affect that 25% or 15%, because there's not much we can do about deer. For cattle, we can set up streamside management zones or buffers, and we have been working with landowners in the Atoyac watershed to do just that. But those things, large cattle operations and large poultry operations and things like that, are pretty heavily regulated already. So a lot of that type of low-hanging fruit has already been addressed through regulation. So what's left is a bunch of disseparate smaller sources that ends up being overflows from wastewater collection systems, failing home septic systems, pet waste that people aren't picking up. And then there's of course some component from any kind of large scale farming operation, but like I said, most of those are directly regulated, and they have plans in place to deal with that. So it becomes a question of personal responsibility at some point, picking up after your pets. The bacteria load from dog waste is especially, we'll say, caustic. It's a high bacteria.
Yes, ma'am. Much in late.
All right. Next up, we have Shay from TWRI.
Hi, good to be here. My name is Shay Postma. I'm a research specialist with the Texas Water Resources Institute. TWRI is the State Water Resources Research Institute, and we are affiliated with Texas A&M AgriLife and Extension. So we basically bring those research and extension resources to several watersheds throughout the state. I've been asked to give a quick update on the Middle Nature's tributaries, TMDL implementation. Michael Strand is the project lead over at TWRI for this. So I'm just going to share some information he gave me to give all of you guys. This is just some quick background on the watershed and TMDL planning process. Basically, TCEQ establishes the water quality standards, and then several entities throughout the state monitor and collect data on the water bodies, and then TCEQ takes that data and pulls it into an integrated report every couple of years, and identifies which water bodies are impaired. And then once those impaired water bodies are identified, then the next step is to characterize the watershed and look at developing either a WPT or TMDL to address the impairment, and then implement that. So Middle Nature's tributaries have a TMDL that was in the implementation phase. These are a bunch of Lufkin area tributaries to the Nature's River, mostly located around Lufkin. The yellow areas on the map show the watershed areas. So basically any water that hits the ground in that watershed area is then running into the creek. And the stuff that's happening on the land in that watershed is going to affect the water flooding in the creek. The TCEQ assessment is based on water samples collected within the respective watersheds. So Jack Creek and Biloxi Creek watersheds are primarily rural with less residential development, large swaths of mixed and pine forests. The watershed has relatively limited cattle grazing and agricultural production. The city of Lufkin is the largest city, and the only one with a watershed the only city in the watershed with a wastewater discharge permit. Jack Creek receives treated wastewater from the city of Hudson. Hurricane Creek and the upper portions of the Cedar Creek watershed are more urbanized, encompassing residential, commercial, and industrial development for the cities of Lufkin and Hudson. And then the downstream portions of the Cedar Creek watershed include mixed hardwood and pine forests and some cattle grazing. More recently, the upper portion of Cedar Creek also found itself on the 303D list for high bacteria and was added to the TMDL through the addendum process. The upper watershed is almost entirely within the city boundaries of Lufkin and Hudson and is over 77% developed. This is showing current conditions in the creeks for bacteria. Data for this project is collected primarily by TCEQ and AONR. These charts show bacteria concentrations in stick pools collected from 2005 through 2025. The red line is the 7-year average, which is basically like a fancy mean of the E. coli concentrations found in those samples. The blue dotted line is the state's criteria or threshold of 126 mpn per annum mil. And that is the threshold where the water body is considered state for circulating. So, what has been done to resolve the bacteria issues? The TCQ worked with ANRA and local stakeholders between 2019 and 2022 to develop the TMDL reports and an implementation plan that includes multiple actions that can be taken by landowners, cities, and others. The TMDL report takes into consideration point sources such as wastewater treatment plants, non-point sources carried by rainfall runoff, sources from potential future growth, and a margin of safety to account for unknowns. The I plan was approved and put into action in 2022. The results of the report found that bacteria in both watersheds is primarily delivered by rainfall runoff rather than wastewater discharges. It's estimated that the bacteria sources in the watershed would need to be reduced by 61 to 95% for stream levels to meet the state threshold. And that's when the 7-year geomean is below 126 mpn per annum mil. So some of the activities in the I plan that could address these sources include promoting feral hog development, improving water quality monitoring, promoting volunteer water quality monitoring, forestry practices, implementing conservation practices on grazed lands, reducing sanitary sewer overflows and unauthorized discharges, and promoting education and awareness for fats, oils, and grease, and promoting proper OSSF management. Since the I plan was approved in 2023, tracking of activities only started last year. Overall, minimal progress has been made in conservation planning on agricultural land or on addressing feral hogs, septic systems, or pet waste. However, the extension has delivered a feral hog management workshop. ANRA continues water quality monitoring and has continued working with the Texas Stream team to encourage volunteer water quality monitoring. The Forest Service reports 92% of monitored sites in silvicultural or timber-producing areas are using forestry best management practices to reduce rainfall runoff, and they also delivered one workshop on forest pest management. So resources to go check out. TCQ has the TMDL and the I plans on the website. TIRI, we have a project page on our website, and the AMRIS Clean program. And then I think TCQ had some updates on the same watershed.
Yeah. So we're gonna let Shay pause for a minute, and we're gonna try and bring the Amber now. Wyatt, TCQ. Wyatt, do you want to try to share your screen?
Yeah, I can go ahead and try and share.
Just stop the sharing over here so we can have a go.
We can see it. Y'all see it okay?
Yes,
sir. All right, perfect. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks Shay for presenting a great overview of kind of what I'm going to talk about here and kind of leading us into this. So, my name's Wyatt Easton. I'm the program manager here at TCQ. I manage the TMDL program. I'm just going to kind of give more of an FYI update on some work that's been going on in these watersheds today. I mean, we can make it up there for the next meeting, and we'll have some more discussion about the actual analysis. But like I said, more of an FYI today. So as Shay kind of just mentioned, we have 4 TMDLs for indicator bacteria in upper Natchez, or the mid Natchez River below Lake Palestine. Those were adopted in 2022. And then in April 24, we added 1 other TMDL for bacteria in Cedar Creek on that 03 AU for that. I just wanted to mention addenda TMDLs are added to existing TMDL watersheds when those additional AUs are kind of located within the existing project watershed. And we try to identify those as much as possible because the process is a little easier. We don't have to go to agenda, which is a lengthy process for us. And so when we can identify those addendum projects, we really try to target those. And then also the addendum and the original TMDLs were developed in coordination with TWRI and local stakeholders as well. So we identified some additional impairments in the watershed on Hurricane Creek on the O2 AU and Biloxi Creek, as well as the O2 AU for that segment. I don't know why those weren't addressed in the original TMDLs before my time. It seems like they've been impaired for a little while, but nonetheless, we plan to partner with TWRI in this fiscal year 25 to develop addendum TMDLs for those. But unfortunately, we got some pretty late in the game funding cuts, and we had to drop that project altogether. But we made the best of a bad situation as much as we could, and we sort of initiated this, what we're calling our in-house TMDL project. So historically, we would contract with partners from around the state like TWRI or HGAC to develop our TMDLs. They would develop them, send them to us, and we take it through the adoption process. But sort of an opportunity for some cost savings, and we have a lot of new folks on the team, so it's a really valuable training exercise. We're initiating this in-house project to develop our TMDLs in-house. Alongside that, we're also trying to develop some SOPs and guidance so that we can try and do this moving forward, alongside our normal work that we do with our partners from around the state. So sort of the inaugural project in this new in-house format, which is pretty exciting for us. So just to show you all the project watershed, Shay kind of showed the green portions there. That yellow portion, the Hurricane Creek O2 AU is in yellow there. It's sort of northeast of Lufkin. And then we're adding the Biloxi Creek downstream AU, which is going to capture a lot more in that watershed in orange. We kind of kicked this project off in January of this year. We plan to sort of finalize and submit the first draft to our internal peer review management. And we're also having a review by one of our partners just to make sure we kind of got everything squared away. I have that penciled in for February of 26. By August 26, we should have our final guidance docs, SOP, so we can use this moving forward for future TMDLs. And then at the latest, we're looking at October 26 to have these TMDLs approved through our WQMP update process. We've been chugging away at it pretty good. I expect we'll probably finish this up early, but that'd be the latest case scenario. So I think that's all I had as far as updates. Thank you all so much for having me.
Anybody have any questions for Wyatt?
Scott.
Man, up to Wyatt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Hand it back to Shay and her pick up on next watershed I'll talk about.
Yeah, sorry about one more update. This is for the Bayou Carrizo watershed project, which I'm the project lead for. This is a newer project, basically started a couple of months ago. We're going to be looking at collecting some additional water quality data and analyzing the project data, as well as existing water quality data on the creek. Sunrise. This is the watershed. Previously, there's only been one monitoring station in the watershed, and that is 2142 around SH21 near Nacogdoches. It's been monitored quarterly for a while by ANRA. And the data coming out of that station has essentially to a polite impairment on the creek. So to begin to address that impairment, we're going to do some additional monitoring at 2 more sites in the watershed and more frequent monitoring. So this will be monthly for the next 18 months. Now, and we're going to see what that data comes out as to evaluate what the water quality needs to our watershed. Additionally, it's the user. So 21432, so the water that feeds into the back station percentage to represent was suffer 1/3 of the creek. We're also going to get a picture, a portion of the watershed with the other sites.
That's my fault.
Sorry, I only have one more slide. So I pulled the data from SWICAM for that existing station that Anna has been monitoring. The current 7-year geometric mean, if you pull all of the data into that calculation, it is 188. Bill. In TCQ's last integrated report in 2022, it was quite a bit higher than that. And part of that is because TCQ doesn't pull every single data point in. They're been excludes based on criteria. Concentrations are higher than the criteria, but they appear to be slowly decreasing over time. So that can depend on yearly weather, water conditions. On here, the black line is the 7-year geometric mean for bacteria, and then the red line is the SACE criteria, 126 ppm per minute level. So goals of this project, monthly sampling is actually in your guide to it. You can under review right now. Once that's done, we can start on monitoring. And we'll be collecting those samples, and we'll be doing that for 18 months for those soil that those barriers listed on the slide. And then we'll do some data analysis, and take a look at what our next steps are going to be, and that could potentially be something like a watershed characterization leading into maybe some data we. And then I'm going to let Emma talk about this next project. Hi everyone, I'm Ina Eismont. I'm a program specialist. I am the project manager on the TWRS Influencing Watershed project. So this is a pretty new project, released to do monitoring for, but the creek has been impaired for a while now because I'm on the IR for quite a bit. Michael Schramm has been doing some work in this watershed for a while, and he helped develop a Team MDL plan that was one of the ones adopted it in 2022. There's a lot of stakeholder interest in potentially developing a WPP. Some of the things they wanted that stakeholder group wanted to do would fit better in WPP plan, but there wasn't enough monitoring data to really justify going into a WPP. So we have this project where we added a site that 2251 is a new sat that we add in. So we're going to be monitoring at these 3 sites for about 2 years. So that monitoring started in June. So we've monitored it twice now, and it's been good so far. We're collecting just normal routine parameters and nutrients and pairing all that with flow. So we'll monitor this for a while. And then at the end of the project, we'll do a characterization report on it. And kind of see what the watershed needs, if it needs more monitoring, or if it's ready for a WPP. And then that's a super short update on Sandy Creek.
Anna.
Yeah.
Thanks for gonna have Alexander if you're talk about a company more projects. Had that one just in case why I wasn't able to connect remotely. Good afternoon, this is Alexander Neal, and I work as a program specialist in College Station at the Water Resources Institute. And I'm going to give updates on our projects that are ongoing and starting soon at Atoyac Bayou and the Lanana Bayou. So the Atoyac Bayou Watershed Protection Plan has been around for, I think, around 15 years now. So it follows sort of a longer history of watershed and water quality monitoring and stakeholder work that's been done in the Atoyac Bayou watershed, which Jeremiah had mentioned earlier, also included some bacteria source monitoring back in the day. But right now, we're kind of on the tail end of our institute leading implementation efforts for this watershed protection plan. And this latest continuation of implementing the plan um, continues to support ongoing surface water quality monitoring efforts, perform adapted outreach and education strategies in this watershed, and also provide information to local residents on the importance of implementing best management practices in any ways that they can, whether it be in the residential area or an agricultural area. So our project that we're about to get funding for is uh, funds that are going to come from the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board through their Clean Water Act 319 non-point source grant program. So we should hopefully be able to start this project by September of this year. It'll be a 3-year project. The surface water quality monitoring that will be done, of course, will be on the locations that are on the right side of my slide here. And this focuses on Atoyac Bayou and several tributaries. The impairments that we're looking at through this activity are bacteria impairments on Atoyac Bayou and on West Creek. So our intention with these grant funds to support and sort of intensify monitoring efforts is done to support the existing Clean Rivers program monitoring work that's already being done, whether or not we were to get these funds. But some of the monitoring that is proposed to be done through this project will be through our staff collecting samples at these sites. So these are Atoyac Bayou at Highway 21, 7, US 59, and West Creek at FM 2913. And by the way, our parameters that are being looked at include some of our standard surface water quality monitoring parameters, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, pH, temperature, but also nutrients, including ammonia, nitrates, nitrites, total phosphorus, total suspended solids, chlorides, sulfates, and E. coli. The sites that are listed on this slide, unlike the slide prior, which had quarterly monitoring, these are actually going to be monthly monitoring sites that will be conducted by staff at SFA. These include Atoyac Bayou at FM 138, Nakanichi, did I say that right? Nakanichi. Nakanichi Creek at FM 95, Wafalo Creek, Terracan Creek, and Big Iron Ore Creek. We also might be able to include Nakanichi Lake. These will pick 5 out of this list based on some prioritizations and conversations that we'll have once the project gets started. We begin to draft our QAPP. This project, like I mentioned, has a lot of historical data to it, and our prior project had monitoring efforts done between June of 2022 and June of 2024, and looked at all the parameters that I've already discussed. But I just had a few graphs here to show that yes, our E. coli numbers are still high. We are going to look like we're going to remain impaired at this time. Impairments over time in this shorter time frame show that there's like slight increases, perhaps in loading of bacteria. Looking at the nutrients, most of our sites
stayed within sort of reasonable numbers for these nutrients, but there was one site, the Toyat Bayou at FM 138, which did have considerably higher numbers with fluoride. So these were much higher numbers than any of the other sites that were sampled in that watershed during this project period. And then just some other graphs showing the E. coli numbers again, and sort of an increasing trend on a lot of these. Big iron ore, not niche. Oops. And then this is the slide that's just showing GeoBeans for each of the 5 sites that were sampled on a monthly basis in prior and in our last iterations of the Toyat Bayou implementation monitoring efforts. And we're at the most recent monitoring we did, geomeans are depicted in the blue column, the numbers displayed there. So we're kind of in the middle of our last 2 iterations and their averages. So we haven't really gotten better. In some spots, we've perhaps gotten a little bit better on our E. coli numbers, but in some of our monitoring stations, we've gotten a little worse. So we're kind of in this middle ground right now between all of the E. coli numbers that we've gotten in the last decade or so. So I'll switch over to Lanana Bayou, and the work that we're doing over there is also being funded by the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board through that same Clean Water Act funds program. And our project that we are in right now started last December, is set to go into November of 2026. And this will be an effort where the implementation of the Lanana Bayou Watershed Protection Plan will be through a partnership between TWRI, ANRAD, and SFA. So this will also continue surface water quality monitoring. We'll do some education and outreach in the watershed. We'll also be connecting stakeholders on current and future implementation efforts, including hopefully looking at some additional ways to get funds to support some other measures that could help reduce bacteria, such as getting more pet waste stations in town. So we'll be looking at that within the city of Nacogdoches. And then also SFA will be working on a hydrologic modeling project for location analysis of best places to create best management practices that could help reduce impacts and bacteria from stormwater. So the monitoring looks at, of course, Lanana Bayou and Bonita Creek. There are bacteria impairments in these watersheds. There's also nutrient concerns for nitrates, total phosphorus in these water bodies as well. So these are the 4 sites that will continue to have quarterly monitoring that's supported through these grant funds, and to acquire the same nutrients and same analysis that we've already discussed. But these include Lanana Bayou at County Road 526, at Loop 224, just upstream of Main Street in town, and then Bonita Creek upstream of MLK Jr. Boulevard. This prior iteration of the continuation of the Lanana WPP included these sites as well, and they did show a lot of bacteria, some pretty high numbers in some cases, for certainly impaired status. But our prior iteration also included an intensive monitoring program that looked at monthly monitoring sites all over town, the county, that weren't being monitored by CRP. So those sites are not included in SWCM or in the Clean Rivers program. But there is going to be probably soon a thesis that will be published by a student at SFA, Swastika Achira. And that analysis shows it's sort of a mapping of hotspots around those sites for bacteria. And some of those sites had really intense bacteria numbers, but that mapping and that hotspot analysis could possibly help stakeholders, if not people that might have failing sewage systems, including the centralized sewage system in town, might be able to assist identify leaks through that mapping. That an activity also utilized a procedure within citizen science known as tampling. It's using tampons to look for optical brighteners that could be within a waterway. So this helps once you already have your idea that, okay, there's bacteria in this waterway, but what is it coming from? Well, if it has optical brighteners in it, that could point to an influence of bacteria that is certainly coming from a failing sewage system or a failing laundry system also. So look forward to that thesis once it's out. I think it will be really useful in our future implementation projects. But my contact here, and if you'd like to follow any of TWRI on social media or get subscribed to some of our educational resources, I have links up there. Any questions? None on large. All right. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for you. So next up, Kimberly, do you want to go or do you want to let Caleb brush with on over?
Well, don't feel bad. The first time I said it out loud, I said like Nakanichi, and I still have not lived that down. Oh yeah. So
At least you don't say Netches.
well, actually, if you watch the latest podcast by Kayak Cliff about the Nature Server Rendezvous that just occurred, I'll be posting it on our social media today. I got to be in his little video for YouTube, and he kept pronouncing it Netches. And so I accidentally followed suit, and I said Netches, and then I said, "What am I doing?" So I've loved a little backing down, and it is now portrayed on social media forever young. So shame on me. Okay, well, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about ANRA's education and outreach activities. I'm Kimberly Wagner. I am the executive manager of communications at ANRA, and I've been at ANRA for 5 years. I was blessed to come start at ANRA right in the midst of or the beginning of COVID-19. So I automatically couldn't do about 90% of my job. So that was a lot of fun. But what I did get to do instead of going out and communicating with people is I got to be boots on the ground. I got to help with the Clean Rivers program, and I got to learn a little bit about all the things that all of you really smart people in this room get to do on a daily basis. So I admire you for the work that you do, the research that you do. My job is to take that information and provide that to the public. And so again, thanks all for your work. I only know about this much. I only know like a surface level amount, but I think that I think I'm pretty decent of being able to reach the public and getting people interested in the work that we do, and that's what it's all about. Because really and truly, all of us academic agencies that do all of this work, we are very important. Don't get me wrong, but the most important people in the room are the everyday citizens, are different organizations and businesses out there, just people who like to go out and enjoy recreation. It's all of the everyday average person that's in the general public that makes the big difference. Without sounding too cliche, it really does take a village in order to make a difference. So shout out to Dr. Dito and to Angelina Beautiful Clay for being here in the room with us today, and also to all of those of you who are online. And of course, thank you to all of you who are presenting everything here today. I look forward to hearing the rest of our presentations. I want to do a quick little embarrassing shout out to Emily, our new CRP coordinator. She joined us in December and she has been doing an absolutely amazing job. The CRP coordinator position, it has a huge learning curve. And she has been able to jump in. Literally, she will jump into any creek, river, pond, stream. She will dive into algae filled ponds. She will wrestle alligators. She will go pick up snakes. She will do anything. Nothing can stop her. And so we just really appreciate all the work that she has been doing and contributing to our CRP program. So thank you, Emily. All right, so I'm going to talk about some of our major campaigns that we have at ANRA that have existed for a couple of years now, but maybe some of the updates and changes that we have had to those. So first up is our Stash Your Trash campaign. So we started this campaign a couple of years ago. We have different community partners that are Keep Texas Beautiful affiliates, and those include Keep Texas Beautiful
Angelina Beautiful Clean, thank you, and also Keep White House Beautiful. So these three different Keep Texas Beautiful affiliates, they are helping us to promote and to distribute these bags. We also have different businesses and organizations. For instance, some gas stations around the lake. We have some just everyday businesses that are even close to a water resource. They just like our Stash Your Trash bags and they want to help us to promote. So I should probably explain to you what the Stash Your Trash bags are before I start talking about that, though. So these are pictures of our new bags, and we have now ordered. We just received a shipment of 15,000 of these bags because we already, in less than about 2.5 years, we distributed 10,000 of them to the general public. And we had yellow ones before, but we wanted to go with a new color. These are supposed to be tangerine orange, but I'm pretty sure they're red. Um, but we had this new design for them that helps to explain what these litter bags are used for. And these are used, first of all, they are made out of recyclable material. Secondly, they are meant to be reusable. And then thirdly, they are great for outdoor recreational activities such as fishing and boating and hiking because they're not like a plastic bag that's going to rip and tear and then all your trash is going to go everywhere. It keeps, all your trash contained. A lot of times the people go like tubing or boating or kayaking. They will tie it to behind their kayak and just let it float in the water behind them. So it's great for that. And these bags are wildly popular. We keep them in our foyer in our main office, and we cannot keep them there. Like people just come in and grab them, and we are constantly having to refill our little Stash Your Trash basket. So that's a really great thing. So it sends out a good message on top of being something that is actually resourceful. And I volunteered at a Blueberry Festival back in June, and we distributed about 500 of those at the Blueberry Festival. Keep White House Beautiful does a big 4th of July event every year, so they put them in different areas around the lake. They put them in buckets for people to pick up, and then, of course, Angelina Beautiful Clean was helping to promote them at our Nature's River Rendezvous event, which I'll talk about soon. All right, so next, the Texas Stream Team. And somebody here mentioned Texas Stream Team earlier. This is something I'm really passionate about. I've been a Texas Stream Team trainer for 3 years now. I am the only one in the Deep East Texas area. So I get questions about Texas Stream Team a lot, and I'm happy to help. I'm happy to provide trainings, general knowledge, share resources for this program. It's near and dear to my heart. And this year, I have now surpassed training more than 100 different volunteers. So, woohoo, good milestone. Now, that doesn't mean there's 100 different people volunteer monitoring our basin, but that message has gone out to more than 100 people now. So, I did host a training back in February, or sorry, in March. I attended our annual training for Stream Team back in February. I put on a training with Keith Navioch's Beautiful and Stephen F. Austin State University back on March 2nd. And then that was a really great training. I actually had to break it into two because I had so many SFA students sign up for the training. I had to break it into two. Now, I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that Dr. Broom was offering extra credit. I'm sure that all of the forestry and environmental students simply wanted to be Texas Stream Team volunteers, right? Right? So, but we combined that with a stream cleanup event there at Bonita Creek. And so this was our second time to do that event. So we decided to make it the annual Texas Stream Team Up and Cleanup event. So we're looking to do that again next March. And then I held a private training in Tyler at an organization called Wildwood Environmental Credits. And so I think I trained 9 people at that training. And so they're a really great organization. I didn't really know anything about them before, but they will all be receiving their certificates any day now, and they'll be able to start doing some monitoring up there. All right. So, as I mentioned, we had done that stream team up and cleanup event. That's the only stream cleanup event that we've done so far this year, but I am planning to do at least one in the fall. So these are just a few pictures from that. As far as did we log how many bags of trash or anything that we picked up? No, we didn't do that, unfortunately. But I can tell you that there was a lot of trash. Let's see, we had probably 50 something, between 50 and 60 community members and SFA students come out to have us do that. And in fact, it really did take us but about 30 minutes to clean up that entire 2 mile section of Bonita Creek because of the amount of volunteers that came out. So that was a really good problem to have. All right. I also, if you have picked up on it, I do like talking and presenting. So I like to do that a lot. As many opportunities as I get to do it, whether it's at a Texas Master Naturalist meeting, for the Rotary Club, or at a school. So we have a lot of different community partners that we work with. These are just some logos from just a few of them. But really have been working at getting into the schools. We have a lot of things that we're going to be doing in the fall that I'm really looking forward to. But the belle of the ball of all the things that I have done so far this year, or since last summer, is the Nature River Rendezvous. It finally happened. So the Nature River Rendezvous is a paddling event that occurs on the Neches River, and it had not happened since 2018. Now, the Lumpkin Angeline County Chamber of Commerce used to put on this event. It originally started back in the late 90s. And it is an event that is used to promote tourism, recreation, but also conservation of our most important natural resource, our waterways, primarily the Neches River. So we had taken this event on, and then last year, due to the really high river conditions, we had to cancel it about 2 weeks before it happened, just because conditions were not safe. So we were really bummed about that, but you know what? It meant we knew what we were doing by then, and so we actually got to have it this year, and it was absolutely perfect conditions. Water flow was good. The temperature, believe it or not, on May 31st, the temperature was a high of 86 degrees. We could not have the humidity was relatively low. Like we could not have asked for anything better. Emily with ABC, she actually traveled in the event, so she can tell you. And then Emily and Jeremiah also both volunteered at the event, so they were there with me. We actually didn't have to sweat too much, so that was great. But this event, it's really special to me because I had actually paddled in the event myself twice in the past, back in 2014 and then in 2018, back the last time it was held. And so luckily I knew a little bit about how everything operated, but we wanted to keep it relatively small with it being our first time bringing this event back from the dead. So we limited it to having 100 vessels out on the water. Kayaks and canoes. But so in some of the kayaks and canoes, we had more than one person. So we ended up with 100 vessels on the water and about 140 paddlers total. As far as volunteers, we had more than 100 volunteers that came from all kinds of different wonderful organizations, including Boy Scouts of America, the Deep East Texas Amateur Radio Club, the Hudson Fire Department Search and Rescue Team, Houston County EMS. I could go on and on and on. We had a wonderful amount of wonderful sponsors, and everybody just came together because everybody had just been waiting for this event to happen. And so everybody was just so happy that it did finally happen. And aside from the porta potties not arriving till 9:30 a.m. that morning, that was the one thing that happens. But there's always going to be that one thing. But we just received rave reviews, nothing but positive feedback on this event. So this is just an event that's really important to the community. Again, without sounding cheesy, it just really brought everybody together. People are already asking what's the date for next year. So possibly May 30th. So mark the calendars. May 30th, 2026. But as you can see from these pictures of our different volunteers and paddlers, it was just wonderful. So if you're not already following our Neches River Rendezvous page, please do. Just search Neches River Rendezvous page on Facebook. All right. As far as social media is not something that I am actually the best at. And I didn't even have a personal social media really anymore. But I keep working on trying to grow inner social media. And we have had a lot of growth. The Neches River Rendezvous has really helped with that. So these are just kind of some of our numbers. As you can see, between June In the past month, between June 17th and July 14th, we had almost 100,000 views, and I kind of think that's good for a little old event right out here in East Texas. So I was pretty happy about that. Well, we've been working on having a lot of engagement and reach and doing things like the rendezvous. The post I made just the other day, which featured Emily for World Snake Day holding a bunch of snakes, that got a lot of positive feedback as well. So we're always trying to help promote all the different things that we are doing to help keep our rivers clean and beautiful for everybody's enjoyment. Another really exciting thing that we are working on, and actually, he came to speak at this very meeting last year, and that is Curtis Craven is working with Ellen Temple of the Temple Foundation to put together a documentary about the Neches River. And last year at our steering committee meeting, if you remember, he actually showed a few clips that will be part of that documentary. And I have felt a celebrity a little bit because he's followed me around on 3 different occasions at different types of events that I've been doing and, interviewing me and, other people as well. But it's been really, really neat. I actually paid to be on camera, but I just had to tell myself this is for the greater good. But these are a couple of shots of pictures of him taking pictures and filming us at different cities. So this picture, we're at a stream team training, and then that's a picture of him at the Neches River Rendezvous filming that. We have a lot of things. This is just a little snapshot of some of the exciting opportunities that we have coming up in the fall. In August, Emily and I are actually going to be making a presentation on our scales, shells, and other wild animal tales at our upcoming Texas Master Naturalist meeting. And we have a watershed workshop that we are working on putting together with the AgriLife Extension Agent Office out of Lufkin in September. In October, I'm planning to host a Texas Stream Team training. That will probably be on the southern part of our basin because this will be for the Sabine Neches Texas Master Naturalist chapter. We are also working with XFA Outdoor Pursuits to put together some guided kayaking tours on the Neches River that would be, kind of conservation and, aquatic life related. So we would be doing tours and pointing out, conservation methods and different types of aquatic animals. So we're excited about trying to put that together and some other different collaborations. I'll chill out the watershed workshop under July, so we're only having one. But we are working on 2 or 3 years ago, we put out some coloring and activity books, and we are looking at putting together version 2.0 of these, so they will be new and improved. I'm excited about working on those. We are also working with some different organizations, Lufkin ISD STEM program and the Angelina Beautiful Clean, to put together some type of a conservation educational social media collaboration. Say that 5 times fast. So stay tuned for that. I'm not going to release a whole lot of details about it just yet. We are also working on a Sasher Trash Sam Rayburn Lake project. I will be working in conjunction with the U.S. Forest Service and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. There are some particular areas of the lakes that are frequently recreated, and they are trash all the time. So we are looking at working possibly with another group like the Boy Scouts to put up some Sasher trash bag stations where people can, get this be like a little dispenser, and they can get these bags and then they can, take them with them. So we're also there's going to be kind of a student-led research component to this, and we're going to be doing some litter surveys and tracking. So yeah, that's something we're really looking forward to and excited about. And then of course, just school presentations in general. I do those just kind of all the time. So looking forward to all of those things. And then I have just a couple of flyers and a courtesy to a couple of things coming up. So this is a workshop that is a collaboration of Texas A&M AgriLife and the Texas State Soil and Water Board. This will be on August 21st. And it is a watershed steward workshop. So mark calendars for that. That should be really interesting. And then Angelina Beautiful Clean is going to be having a clay shoot. And Angelina Beautiful Clean's mission is to help keep our county, whether it's our roadways or our but it's clean and beautiful for all to enjoy. So if you want to sponsor or have a team, take a shot at winning some prizes, pun intended, then contact her there in the back about Pat, or you can scan the QR code. I'll give you clicks to do that. All right. Well, that is it for me. So, are there any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of your stash the trash,
Yes.
just an FYI, Lake Nacogdoches, September 20th, we're doing a dive for debris in the swim area. And the last time we did it up towards Tyler, north of Tyler, we brought out 30 badass.
Okay. Do you need more? I happen to have 1,000 of them in the back of my Jeep right now.
So what I'm saying is, if you don't get interested, this is the same idea, but we go under and get the trash.
Oh, wow. Yeah. She does.
Can you email that information to me and we'll put it out on our site?
Yes, that is awesome.
Okay, yeah, we do it every year, and we just get your location. Sounds like Sam Rayburn needs to be mentioned.
Sounded like it. Yes, let's talk. See, guys, this is what it's all about. Collaboration and networking. They are connection made.
Then he can snorkel and do it. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat from Carmen Montana Shock. I hope I'm not butchering your last name. She said, "What is the affiliation of the Texas Stream Team? Also, what type of training is expected in October 2025?" So ANRA is a partner with Texas Stream Team. Texas Stream Team is actually it was born out of the Texas State University Meadows Center. Yeah. And it is we're an affiliate partner for them. And so I'm the only trainer in this area. There are other trainers. There's about 20 other trainers around the state. But if who did you say was in the chat that asked the question? Carmen. So Carmen, if you or someone you know is interested in a training, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. And then as far as what is expected as far as training goes, volunteer water quality monitors, there's different types of trainings. Now, I'm wholly qualified to teach standard core water quality monitoring, which is where you would conduct field observations, and then you would also test for pH, dissolved oxygen, and conductivity. The initial training is about 2.5, 3 hours of length. And then once you receive your certification for that, the requirement is to monitor once a month for 1 year at minimum. Of course, you can monitor for longer than that. And for the most part, you can choose a waterway of your choice, but we can provide some guided preferences as to where that is. And does that answer your question, Carmen? Looks like you're not typing. So, okay, great. We actually said thank you. We actually have another question in the chat from David again. Okay. He asks, "Well, thank you for all the great presentations. Are there any standout U.S. fish and wildlife listed endangered or threatened species from the Endangered Species Act that complicate any of this great work in any of these water basins under any of these states?"
I don't. There are some species of concern, but I don't feel like they are any kind of complication to our efforts. They would be complications to the things that we're doing to try and promote water quality improvements would also help most of those species. So I wouldn't consider them impediments to what we're doing.
I concur. Yes, said thank you for the feedback. Right. And Ellie, thank you for jumping right in and taking care of those questions. So, anything else? I was a terrible executive manager of communications, and I did not put my contact information on my last slide. I don't know what I was thinking, but kwagner@anra.org, or you can just look up ANRA's main number on our website, www.anra.org, and I'm Kimberly Laffner, so you can find me there. Thank you.
Next up, we have Caleb. I'm gonna get hopefully I got the right presentation request her.
Yeah, that's it. that. Hello, thank you for having me. So my name's Caleb Mullins. I'm currently a doctoral student at SFA. Been here for about 2 years now. Originally, I'm from Virginia. Then I moved to Alabama to get my master's, and now I'm here. So today I'm going to talk to you about a large component of my dissertation. Been working on the past 2 years. Now, some of the data analyses I'm still working on, finishing that up, so it's preliminary. But first, I want to talk about the importance of amphibians, as they play critical roles in ecosystems for both predators and prey, help control mosquito populations, and act as indicators of environmental change, as Emily previously mentioned. Their sensitivity makes them early warning systems for ecosystem stress. They're also culturally significant and are in global decline, making them a conservation priority throughout most of the world. Amphibians have several distinct life history traits that make them especially vulnerable. They are poor dispersers, meaning their home range is generally small, and their dual life cycle, aquatic and terrestrial, exposes them to multiple environmental threats across those stages. They have permeable skin, and the eggs rely on moisture, meaning they're highly sensitive to pollutants and other contaminants. They often require very specific habitats to breathe successfully. Dehydration, limited movement, and narrow thermal or chemical tolerance increase their risk of local extinction when environmental conditions shift. The reproductive success of many species depended upon the selection of oviposition sites. What that means is just where they lay their eggs. And these choices directly impact parental fitness, population recruitment, and ultimately community structure. For amphibians, this choice is critical as larvae are confined to the aquatic environment until metamorphosis. Female amphibians will often select size based on various cues and conditions of that respected site. However, a combination of factors influences these choices. Some of the biotic factors, they include the presence of predators, competitors, and conspecifics. These factors play a significant role as they can directly impact offspring survival and fitness. Previous research has demonstrated that female amphibians will actively avoid sites containing predators such as fish or dragonfly larvae, and are further influenced by the density of conspecifics and other competitive species. Some of the abiotic factors include temperature, hydroperiod, water quality, and substrate quality and quantity. Together, these alterations to the abiotic environment can affect the quality and quantity of oviposition sites, potentially influencing amphibian reproductive strategies. Amphibian declines are not caused by one single threat, but by multiple interacting stressors such as habitat loss, pollution, disease, climate change, and invasive species. These pressures often act in combination, which makes understanding context important, as amphibians are inherently vulnerable because of their biology and life history traits. But how they respond to any given threat depends heavily on context, what species are present, what other stressors exist, and when and where it happens. And this slide reinforces those stressors, meaning they don't operate in a vacuum. The same threat can produce very different outcomes depending on the species, their life history traits, or the timing of exposure. And we call that phenology, specifically the breeding patterns, whether it's a winter, summer, fall breeding species. On the left of the slide, we see some species may tolerate disturbance while others may not. The middle panel highlights that multiple stressors often act together. For example, UVB, exposure and chemical runoff, can interact to increase mortality far beyond what uh what they would cause alone. Sorry. And on the right, invasive species rarely act as just one threat. They can function simultaneously as predators, competitors, and even disease vectors, creating layered stress for amphibians. That's why context matters. And my study was designed to explore exactly this, how different factors interact to shape amphibian responses. So, as I sort of mentioned, one of the major drivers of amphibian declines and one of the drivers that's least studied is invasive species, as they are responsible for about one third of all amphibian extinctions. With 16% of extant amphibian species threatened, this is a very large concern. They affect amphibians both directly through, as I mentioned, predation or competition, and indirectly by modifying habitats in ways that make them unsuitable. Invasive plants can significantly alter breeding habitats, often by reducing habitat complexity and homogenizing the landscape. This can further affect water chemistry, shade levels, and nutrient cycling, making those breeding sites potentially unsuitable. These changes can affect larval survival rate and ultimately reduce amphibian community diversity. And one such species I'm sure all of us in East Texas is familiar with is Chinese tallow. It's a fast growing invasive tree that was originally introduced in the 1700s to the US with seeds provided by Benjamin Franklin in South Carolina. Fun fact, I couldn't believe it when I found that out, but thanks, Ben. But it's became widespread throughout most of the Gulf Coast South in the early 1900s as it was promoted by the USDA as agricultural crop due to the tallow in its name hence. And a previous study conducted by Oswald in 2010, I believe, found that between Louisiana and East Texas, Chinese tallow was the fifth most common tree species found. And that was in 2010. And then that same study found that between 1991 and 2005, the population of tallow alone increased by 174%. So it's spreads very, very fast, and there's not a lot of new literature related to population spread. Because when it comes to invasive species ecology, in a way, it's like, why is it worth spending all this time figuring out how large the population is? To be an invasive species, it has to become established. Honestly, once it becomes established, it's all about management and control of that species. So next, I'm going to talk about what I like to call its invasiveness traits, what makes it invasive. Chinese tallow exhibits rapid growth, allowing it to reach larger sizes in early life stages. Its high shade tolerance outperforms, um, its high shade tolerance enables it to thrive in both well lit and shaded environments. Additionally, its flood tolerance allows it to persist in waterlogged soils where many native species may struggle, further facilitating its spread in wetland ecosystems. One of the key ecological impacts of Chinese tallow is its fast leaf decomposition rates. Its leaves break down very quickly, and this accelerated nutrient turnover can disrupt natural nutrient cycles. Overall, the combination of these traits, especially the fast decomposition rates, makes Chinese tallow a highly invasive species that significantly alters wetland habitats. As I sort of, mentioned in that previous slide, the leaf litter of Chinese tallow breaks down quickly. And as it's breaking down very quickly, it releases a lot of tannins of other nutrients compared to our native species into the water. And you can see in this image here, this tank just contains tallow leaves. And this is about 10 days after introduction of leaves that looks just like coffee compared to, say, you had oak species, it would look more like tea, a little bit lighter. So this can lower oxygen, dissolved oxygen levels and pH, creating a stressful environment for amphibians. These changes can lead to higher mortality, early hatching, and stunted growth. What you see here in this diagram is from a study that was conducted by SFA and Dan Science with the Forest Service over in Nacogdoches. Basically, what they looked here is at the hatching effects of Chinese tallow compared to control. So, meaning eggs was placed in a bucket with just water, eggs was placed in a bucket with just tallow leaves. They recorded the time of hatching for each of these individuals, and you can see the control, the tadpoles are a little bit larger. However, there's a stunted growth that was observed for the tallow species, or for the tadpoles in the tallow treatment, sorry. So this graph shows how tallow quickly drops down dissolved oxygen, creating conditions that can be stressful or even lethal. So this was a side experiment that I conducted in the lab under control settings. So the green line was just a control, so just water to provide that baseline. And then the orange line was the dissolved oxygen levels for Chinese tallow. You can see how quickly it drops off in a matter of days. Goes from roughly 70% or 7 milligrams per liter down to basically zero. Very anoxic environment is what it's creating. Most of the previous studies that was conducted used controlled introductions of amphibians into tanks with tallow, as shown in this image here. That approach is valuable, but it leaves a huge knowledge gap. It doesn't tell us how amphibians respond naturally to these changes, especially when given a choice of where to breed. And this leads to the core of my dissertation. I'll be talking about the experiments that was conducted between spring and summer of 2024 in this section. And this is where we asked whether amphibians would actively avoid tallow leaf litter in more naturalistic mesocosm environments. So bringing the lab outdoors, essentially. And this was their core research question. Does Chinese tallow leaf litter affect where amphibians lay their eggs compared to native leaf litter types like loblolly pine, Shumard oak, and East Texas wetlands? We hypothesized that amphibians prefer oviposition sites with more favorable water quality conditions, created or characterized by high dissolved oxygen, neutral pH, so the loblolly pine, the Shumard oak. However, the Chinese tallow leaf litter, particularly at higher leaf litter concentrations, will negatively impact water quality, leading to reduced amphibian oviposition. For this experiment, we used aquatic mesocosms to simulate natural wetlands where amphibians breed. Mesocosm is essentially a controlled experimental ecosystem. It allows us to study ecological processes like oviposition site selection, but under realistic, still manageable conditions. They are widely used in experimental ecology because they bridge the gap between laboratory and field-based studies. In our case, we used 35 Rubbermaid stock tanks, each filled with 800 liters of aged well water. Tanks were evenly spaced 1 meter apart. We also used shade cutters to prevent unwanted colonization from aerial predators or other leaf litter. But importantly, this design still allowed great tree frogs, which was our target species, to enter and oviposit as they wanted to. This setup gave us strong control over the leaf litter inputs and other variables, while still maintaining ecological relevance for amphibian behavior. Also, this was conducted at the SFA Experimental Forest right next to the Alazan Bayou WMA. For this experiment, we used the factorial design to test the interactive effects of leaf litter species and concentration on amphibian oviposition. We tested 4 leaf litter treatments: Chinese tallow, Shumard oak, loblolly pine, and control with no litter to serve as a baseline. Each species was tested at 2 concentrations, 1 gram of leaf litter per 1 liter of water, referred to as level 1 from here on, and then 2 grams of leaf litter per 1 liter of water, or level 2. And this was essentially to simulate some environments where you might have more tallow present in a wetland, versus others. This design not only allowed us to assess the individual effects of leaf litter species or concentration, but also how they may interact to influence water quality and anurine behavior. Each treatment group, meaning the leaf litter type and concentration, was replicated 5 times to ensure statistical power. Treatments were randomly assigned to the 35 mesocosms, which helped eliminate placement bias and control for environmental variation across the array. As shown on the right, every mesocosm received a specific treatment combination, and this cafeteria-style setup allowed amphibians to choose from a diverse range of potential of the position sites. Water quality parameters were monitored on a weekly basis beginning the 1st of March in 2024 through October of 2024. Those parameters included temperature, pH, DO, conductivity, turbidity, total dissolved solids, and all of those collectively are known to influence amphibian behavior and development. So, to determine if these treatments alter amphibian oviposition site selection, the following data was reported for each night from April 14th to May 17th of 2024, meaning we went out each night except I think there was 2 nights we did not because of tornado issue. If rocks are not worth, by holding a tornado, no matter what your advisor might say. I love them, but not that much. So for each mesocosm, we reported the number of male and female frogs present. And for the greater tree frogs, you can actually sex this individual. The easiest way, if it's calling, it's a male. Also, for gray tree frogs, the males has a darker throat compared to the females. The females has a very light-colored throat. In addition, generally speaking, the males are smaller than the females as well. I know that's a little more than we probably expected today, but, Next, we reported the number of amplectic or breeding pairs, the presence or absence of eggs, presence or absence of tadpoles, and then following the end of the breeding period, conducted a time-constrained dipnet survey to assess the relative abundance of tadpoles. That's where I went to each mesocosm and actively dipnet it for 5 minutes, and that was a long time frame to do. So now moving on to the results, I'm going to get into some of the water quality data. The data here for the water quality only includes data sampled within that breeding period, so that March to May period. The box plot shows how treatments affect dissolved oxygen, different layers, indicates statistical differences if treatments share a letter. They are not significantly different. Overall, dissolved oxygen decreased in all leaf litter treatments of all of those except for the control. Generally, dissolved oxygen was lowest in the Cali treatments, which was not a surprise to us. Though to the lowest in the Cali treatments, followed by the oak treatments, which, like I said, it's not a surprise due to the amount of tannins in both of those leaf litter species. And then tallow level 1 and 2 had the most significant reduction, followed by oak level 1 and 2. However, the pine treatments retain higher dissolved oxygen compared to the control. Now moving on to pH, it followed a similar trend to dissolved oxygen, with control having the highest pH, followed by pine, oak, and tallow. The tallow level 1 had lower pH than pine level 2. Tallow level 2 was significantly different from the pine treatments. The most acidic conditions, once again, was observed in tallow level 2, which indicates a significant acidification effect of tallow compared to the pine treatments. This might be a lot to take in, but basically this heat map just shows how many eggs and tadpoles was observed each week in the treatment group. The patterns are clear, as the pine and control treatments had the highest counts. In contrast, the tallow treatments, especially at that high concentration, had consistently lower numbers across the board. This suggests that frogs either avoided those tanks or that conditions were too poor for tadpoles to survive. This occurrence data reinforced that pattern. Adult male, female, and implexic pairs were least frequently observed in the tallow treatments. Down here. Moment. Then further on, the statistical modeling confirmed this as Tally significantly reduced the probability of tadpole presence. Oat had intermediate effects. Pine and control treatments had the highest presence. And this figure represents the predicted probability of observing tadpoles across treatments using a binomial model with a proportion-based response. Instead of a simple presence-absence, the probabilities reflect the number of nights out of 7 that tadpoles were detected in each experimental unit. Tallow level 1 and 2 significantly decreased the probability of tadpole presence, as the lowest probabilities was observed in those respective treatment groups. This indicates that Chinese tallow leaf litter strongly reduces habitat suitability. And then our end of season DITNEC survey echoed these findings a little bit further. As tadpoles were absent in tallow tanks, even where eggs has been observed in those tanks at one point in time. A crustal walls test can reveal that tadpole abundance varied significantly across all the treatments. Post-hoc done test revealed that pine level 1 had significantly higher tadpole abundance than both of the tallow treatments. And most importantly, though, no tadpoles was observed in either of the tallow treatments during the DITNEC survey, suggesting a strong avoidance or high mortality rate from those treatments. So moving on from last year's experiment, this is what I've done over the last spring throughout the summer. And we expanded from that study. This one's a little bit more complex, multifactorial design, and assesses both the abiotic and abiotic factor as well. For this year's experiment, as said, we expanded that design to ask a broader question. How do wetland size, leaf litter species, and predator pressure interact to influence where amphibians lay their eggs? We're testing 3 key factors: wetland size. First, I have the 800-liter tanks, and then I have 80-liter tanks to represent permanent wetlands versus a more ephemeral wetland. Then the same leaf litter species. Then the presence or absence of a predator, and I chose western mosquito fish. Even though it is native throughout most of Texas, it's considered invasive in other parts of the country. Also, due to, as you might guess, its name, mosquito fish, it's been spread around a lot of the country. Populations has increased significantly. And they eat not only mosquito, but also amphibian eggs, tadpoles as well. Here are 3 main hypotheses. First, the frogs will prefer the larger wetlands, as we expect more eggs, tadpoles in those 800-liter tanks due to the carrying capacity of that mesocosm. Second, they'll avoid Chinese tallow because of those negative water quality effects, so we can predict fewer eggs and tadpoles in the tallow treatment. And lastly, we expect frogs to avoid laying eggs for mosquito fish for present due to the predation risk. So for this one, instead of that cafeteria design you saw previously, we used a full factorial randomized block design. That means we tested every possible combination of wetland size, leaf litter, and predator presence or absence. Each of the 16 mesocosms in a block received unique treatment combinations, and they were randomly assigned to that respective block. The blocking helps control for differences in environmental factors like sun exposure, drainage, or wind that might vary across sites. And by randomizing treatments within each block, we ensure that these local effects don't bias our results, giving us cleaner comparisons across the treatments. So this image is just an overhead view of Block A, showing how the treatments were laid out in the field. Had a total of 6 blocks, so they were 6 different sites essentially located at the experimental forest. Each contains 16 mesocosm, resulting in 96 total experimental units. This randomized layout ensured treatment effects weren't confounded by local site conditions. This design gives a strong power to detect both main effects and interactions. So I used similar other position surveys. However, I wanted to extend the survey time period this year. Survey each night between March 23rd to June 12th. And that was essentially the entire breeding season of the gray tree frogs. Each night, once again, counted the number of adult male or female frogs present, the number of eclectic pairs present, the presence or absence of eggs. However, I also estimated the number of egg masses present in each tank, in addition to the Gaussner group of each egg mass as well. I'll go into depth about that on the next slide. Tadpoles, presence or absence, and the Gaussner group. And finally, at the midpoint and end of the breeding period, conducted a box neck survey to estimate density of tadpoles in each tank. So I previously mentioned for the eggs, use that Gaussner stage system, which is a standardized method for describing a neuron development from fertilized egg to metamorphosis. So I grouped them based upon the similarities of the Gaussner stages. The first one is 1 through 8, that's fresh eggs. Gaussner stage 9 through 13 is when you can observe cleavage in the egg. 14 through 18 is when the tail bud starts to form. You might see some light twitching as well of the egg mass. And then from 19 to 25, that's when they start moving a lot. They're about ready to hash. The jelly thins as well, starting to look more like a tadpole. Then for tadpoles, use similar system as well. From 26 to 30, that was characterized by hind limb development. Very hard to see in this picture. This guy's roughly at about 26, give or take, on the Gaussner stage. Then 31 to 40, that's forelimb development. As you can see the hind limb good here, but the forelimb, you can see a little bump maybe in this image. And then approaching metamorphosis, you start to see those hind limbs look normal like a frog. The tail to some extent starts to shorten. And lastly, metamorph, or a froglet. So for this year's data, I just finished up a couple weeks ago. Haven't had a lot of time to analyze it. So that'll be saved hopefully for another talk sometime down the road. But I want to end with the rapid breakdown of Chinese tallow leaf litter significantly alters water chemistry. As tallow decomposes, it releases tannins and organic matter, which fuel microbial activity. That microbial spike increases biological oxygen demand, quickly reducing dissolved oxygen levels in water. You can see that process here. These tanks show just 7 days of decomposition with visible darkening and tannin release. So, in contrast, native species like oak and pine, they decompose more slowly, release fewer secondary compounds. This leads to more stable, favorable water conditions for amphibians and other aquatic organisms. So the difference in decomposition rate between invasive and native species has real consequences for water quality, not just for amphibians, but the entire aquatic community. So with Chinese tallow creating low dissolved oxygen, pH, and high turbidity levels, this creates that physiological stressful environment for tadpoles. In this video, you can see breaks in the water. That's tadpoles coming out to an air gulp due to that low oxygen environment. While this helps them survive short term, it reduces fitness and makes them more visible and vulnerable to predators such as mosquito dish in this case. Tadpoles were absent from tallow treatments during the 2024 DipNet survey. However, a limited number of tadpoles was observed in the tallow treatments for this year's experiment. This suggests Chinese tallow may contribute to elevated larva mortality potentially reducing survival beyond the X stage. To close, I want to highlight both the amphibian specific and broader ecosystem impacts of Chinese tallow. On the left, we see that oat position is tightly linked to water quality. Tallow litter lowers dissolved oxygen and pH, leading to fewer eggs and reduced tadpole survival. These effects may be stronger in small or ephemeral wetlands, which lack the buffering capacity of large systems. On the right, tallow's influence goes beyond individual species. It forms monospecific stands that reduce habitat complexity, and it fragments breeding habitats, which limit gene flow and movement across landscapes. Finally, altered nutrient cycling could ripple downstream, affecting entire aquatic food webs. So we're not just looking at one species, we're looking at a potential shifts in wetland function as a whole. Also, I want to note there's a potential human health component as well to spread of tallow and the effects of tallow leaf litter. In almost every mesocosm that contain tallow, mosquitoes love the tallow leaf litter because of that negative environment that tallow creates. We're like, hey, what's the likelihood of a predator being in the system due to that? Those negative effects of water quality. So it could potentially facilitate the spread of other mosquito-borne diseases as well. We're looking into that. I have an undergraduate that's going to be doing the experiment under me and Dr. Eversole this fall related to this issue. Man, this is it. To wrap up, invasive species represent a persistent and growing threat to the amphibians, but their impacts are not uniform. Responses vary by species, region, and context, which means conservation strategies must be tailored and site-specific. Amphibians are sensitive indicators of environmental change, and their responses can help guide adaptive management. Continued research, like we've discussed today, is essential for shaping evidence-based interventions. And ultimately, a hopeful future depends on bringing together ecology, restoration, and public action to protect these vulnerable species and habitats they depend on. I'd like to acknowledge all of the volunteers, all of the undergrads, grad students that's helped me out. As you could imagine, this is a very time-intensive research. Also funding the McIntyre Students Program, the college, TLL, Temple Foundation, and questions.
Did you do anything for the water following deposits over that long period of time, especially that 3-month period?
So are you saying just reporting the data or?
Yeah. Or did you do any did you do water changes? Did you do bubblers or anything like that?
No.
So-
All the thing I did was just record those initial variables. For all of the mesocosms, I did drill overflow holes and essentially just whatever rainfall fell in to wash out. I didn't add anything into it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I am collecting some data related to water clarity, water color as well with spectrometer. Still analyzing that data. So, and also I did record, I didn't have it in this presentation, but I have data, like I said, from March to October of last year. So that whole time frame. And this year I began in January and I'm still recording data on a weekly basis for water quality. What I've noticed this year, counterintuitive to the hypothesis with the small wetlands and the large wetlands, turnover occurred a lot quicker in those smaller wetlands. So those negative effects of tallow, yes, they were really bad for a short time frame, but we had a lot of rain, remember, in February. So that basically washed out all of those negative effects. So that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing, depending upon, climate patterns in the future. I'll have more info on that. The data will show it later on.
The feature on the mesocosm level labs the movement of the amphibians, getting in and out.
So with them being tree frogs the ability to climb. And these lids, let me go back. Sorry.
Just highlighting how much work you put into this.
Yeah. So these lids essentially, I just have PVC over them, and there's nothing binding the shape cover to the mesoplasm. So there's enough room for the tree frog to climb up and climb in. So like telling, hey, it's not the easiest thing to get into. So why don't you get into fair?
Yeah.
And now with the small mesoplasms, I just essentially flip the lids upside down. They can still climb into the mesoplasm, but still keep out other things I don't want in there. Yeah. Yeah, this was a lot of work along. Had built all of the lids as well. Transport water to 6 different locations.
So refund yourself to all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you get the water out here?
400 liters at a time.
What was his sourcing water?
Well water.
Well water.
Yeah. Yeah, they initially I was filling up with just basic water spigot, right? So you can imagine how long it would take to get 400 liters. And the NRCS folks out there, they were tired of not having water pressure because of me. So 2 days later, we were like, we're going to raise something up. There's a 4-inch pipe out here. We'll get this going for you. So that, sped up the process. However, it still took a week to fill all of those tanks up. Because once I transported it, I had to get a water pump out and empty it into the tanks. Essentially, yeah, it was not fun. Not fun at all.
How many tanks were there? How many tanks?
So in this picture from last year, I just had 35 of the large tanks. I had a separate experiment with the small ones sort of in the background at 35 more. So in total, that's 70 last year. This year I had 96. So I wanted to add another treatment and increase replicates.
What are you going to do with the cat you finish your research?
New research? Some that I mentioned about the mosquito stuff with the undergrad, she'll be using some of that in the fall. We're hoping to have another student come in, maybe do a master's. I have a couple of ideas. That way I can sort of keep the tanks out there and don't have to move everything around. Because it's a lot of work just maintaining and keeping up with all this. On top of, I got lab experiments as well that I'm doing. I'm looking at the effect of temperature increase on decomposition related to hatching and some other variables as well. That way I had that climate context. It's just, I like to do that in the field, but I can't heat up these guys at the experimental forest.
Certainly impressive.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
And chat.
Alrighty. Well, thank you guys for having me. And I had cards back there if you want to reach out about the quality. I have a bunch of undergrads as well that's worked under me. They're always looking for experiments. So just let me know that I can send them your way, hopefully.
You can open difference between a breaking frog and a coat very few frog though.
Physically, you cannot. The only way you can tell the difference is the call or DNA. That's the only way. So when I publish this, I will be putting it under the Hyla chrysosceles complex.
It helped out with her soul. It's gonna make me take Aries little frog in DNA.
So if I did look at Big Rob abundance numbers for the number of adult females encountered this year, I was at 1,400 frogs. Yeah. I just remember temperature dependent sex determination for the bred child. I thought it was 2, but it's just that.
All right. Does anybody have anything that they want to add before I shut down the Armsman meeting? In that case, thank you, everybody.
Are you
Call it a day.